Well, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I pray that you're all having a blessed week wherever you are. If you are new here, my name is Amaris, and this is That Refining Fire. So I was talking to my friend this morning about the topic of surrender. And the very first video that I ever made on this channel was about being fully surrendered. And I talked about that topic because I was surrendering something in my life to be able to follow the will of God in another area. And I talked about how surrender is continual, and it's not about being surrendered in just one or two areas of your life, but it's giving your whole life to being surrendered to the Lord, to His will for your life, and laying down your dreams and your desires and your plans so that His will can take precedent in your life. And that God gives us dreams and desires and things, but it's up to Him to decide what we do with them. And He gives us talents and giftings, and it's also up to Him to decide what to do with them. I think that this topic requires just a little bit more practical explanation, because when I was talking to my friend today, I realized that the Lord can lead us to surrender something in our life. And He's done this with me, where He's asked me to surrender something in my life, but I dropped it so fully because I thought that what He was asking of me was to drop it forever. Like He wanted to take this thing from me. But the reality is that surrender is being able to be movable by the Lord. It's being able to be moved according to His will, to move in obedience. And God might ask us to drop things for a season. He might ask us to surrender desires that we have. And oftentimes God does give us dreams and desires and has plans for our lives, and He'll bless us with things and He'll give us things to steward. But being surrendered is allowing God to, at a moment's notice, change the trajectory of how you use that gift or what that idea or desire is meant to turn into in the future. I have one example where I had always had a dream of doing this one particular thing. And I, in my human understanding and in my flesh, I just devoted so much time and effort and thought into creating a plan for this thing, like how I was going to get there and what it was going to look like, and designing all the intricate little elements about this desire that I had. And it was so consuming that it was actually getting in the way of other areas of my life and other areas that I needed to be surrendered in my life. And so for a time, the Lord asked me to surrender this thing. And at the time, I felt like He was asking me to surrender it because it wasn't something that He had for me. And so it was difficult, but I had a come to God moment and I just surrendered it. I laid it down and I said, Lord, I leave this to You to decide, and I am not going to pursue this anymore. I'm laying this at Your feet, and if it never happens, it never happens. And I think that that was the right heart posture to be in at the moment, except underlying that heart posture was this small idea that He was asking me to surrender it because He just didn't intend for this thing to happen. He didn't intend for me to actually do this thing that I had been planning for. And while I think that there are things that God can ask us to give up entirely for His purpose, Jesus laid down His whole life, His entire life, He laid down at the cross in order to accomplish God's will. But I also think that sometimes that there are things that God does not intend for us to drop because he doesn't intend for them to ever happen. He just doesn't want us to be holding things so tightly and putting all of our own flesh and thoughts and plans into things and pushing them in directions that he never intended for them to go. Being surrendered is saying, you gave me this gifting, or you gave me this desire. Do with it what you want. Do with it what you intend for it to be for. You could have the gift of singing and use that gift for all kinds of purposes that are not what God gave you that gift for. It's understanding that everything that we have is God's for us to steward for his purpose. And so we can have all kinds of ideas and desires and wants in life and lead ourselves in all kinds of directions that God never intended us to be in. And we can be so fully surrendered in our minds that we can drop things that God intended for us to hold. He just intended for us to hold them in a different way. And this all seems very vague now that I'm talking about it and now that I'm saying it out loud. God doesn't want us to have a grip on things so tightly that we aren't willing to give them to him and allow him to mold them and shape them and do with them what he desires to do within his will. But he also doesn't want us to be so afraid to hold things that he's given us a desire or a dream or a gifting for, that we aren't willing to use them for his purpose because we're so afraid that we won't use them for his purpose, or that it's just not something that he has for us. I think that the pinnacle of surrendered is the even if. Even if God doesn't allow me to do what I want to do with this gifting, he's still my God, and I'm going to serve him with it in the way that he wants me to. Even if I never end up working in that field, even if I never end up building that house, even if I never end up having children, even if I never get married, even if my ministry never reaches this specific set of people or this location or never grows to this size of a stadium, I'm going to be surrendered to be a vessel and a steward of whatever God places in my hands. And I will always hold it with my hands wide open so that God can do whatever he needs to do with it. It's not being unable to hold it out of fear of misuse or holding on to it so tightly that you are enforcing your own will in the situation or over that thing that you're holding. It's just remembering that we're not in control. And I think this can be especially hard for people who, like I was telling my friend this morning, are creative. Like, not everybody can picture and envision futures and possibilities and where they want to go specifically in the future, or what the best outcome would be in a situation where you think that God could potentially bless you, or he could heal or deliver or fix a situation. Creative people, we have great imaginations, and we can imagine wild things that, we can end up laying as the foundation for how God is supposed to operate. But God usually always and does always operate outside of our wildest dreams and our ability to dream up and imagine. And he moves outside of our understanding. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We see a picture that we're looking through a peephole that's this big, and he can see as far as the eye can see and further. He sees all of the elements. He sees everything moving, and he is busy working all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And we only see our tiny little blinder vision. So we might, come up with a plan, come up with some idea about how we're supposed to move in the future, how God intends for us to use some particular gift that we have, or some idea that he's placed on our heart. But the whole idea of surrender is not getting ahead of ourselves. not getting ahead of ourselves, living with our hands open so that God can move and change things according to his will, that he can use the things that he's created us to have to be used for his purpose, and never have our grip too tight and never not be willing to hold something that he has for us because we're afraid to use it in our own understanding and our own power and not let him use it for his. So that was just something that I felt I needed to get on here and record. I know that I've struggled with this idea. I've surrendered things to the Lord, and then I've been afraid to hold them, almost out of fear of disappointment, almost out of fear of not getting the picture that I had developed in my own mind. The reality is that if God's given something to you, it's always better than what you have imagined. If he's going to give it to you, it's always going to be better. So I hope that this makes sense, and I hope that it blessed you to some small degree. And I will see you in the next one. Till then, bye.